Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and now it is time for public comment.
We have
Secretary?
3 speakers, Ben Churchill, followed by Deborah Shade, followed by Kathy Railings.
And just to clarify, we do have 3 minutes for public comment.
That is correct.
All right, thank you very much. And just so everybody's aware, there's lights on the podium, and it will count you off. Green is go, yellow is you got some time left, but not very much, and red is please stop. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. My name is Ben Churchill. I'm the superintendent of Carlsbad Unified School District here in Carlsbad. Want to first and foremost thank you for your leadership. I appreciate all that you're doing on this issue for the JPA. The school district is very aware of rising costs of energy, and we are looking forward to finding ways to work collaboratively with the CEA JPA to impact that. In Carlsbad Unified School District, our second largest budget item after people obviously is the bulk of our budget, but then the second largest line item is energy. We spend about $2 million a year just keeping the lights on in our schools. So certainly we're trying to be thoughtful about ways to impact that. We're doing a lot to minimize energy use right now, including the use of natural light and air, energy efficient construction materials and methods as we do new construction, and a $6.5 million investment in solar as part of our Phase 1 bond construction program. We are looking forward for further discussion after the JPA hires staff. Certainly we understand that there's some time for that. An item of interest to discuss is the possibility of school energy rates, as we are different than other industries. We don't have the ability to adjust our revenue to offset increasing energy costs. So we would ask that schools at least be thought about slightly differently than other large energy consumers. Again, thank you for your leadership. Thank you for what you're doing, and we look forward to collaborating in the future.
Thank you very much. And just to follow up with staff really quick, are we connecting with the Unified School District for collaboration moving forward? How's that going to work?
At the pleasure of the board, we would be happy to do that. Absolutely.
And would it be appropriate to make a motion to place that on a future agenda?
That would be great.
I'd like to make a motion to add conversations with our school districts as a part of our work plan moving forward.
I'll second.
And please vote.
Motion carries. Well, it does on my screen. Did you? Ms. Becker, lock?
Is it locked? Oh.
And that
Thank
passes
you.
unanimously. Thank you very much. Our next public speaker, please.
Deborah Shade?
Good morning, and thank you. I want to also echo thank you for your efforts moving clean energy forward in our cities. My name is Deborah Shade. I'm a 17-year board member for the Solana Beach School District and also a 20-year resident of the city of Solana Beach. Our district has roughly 3,000 students, 7 schools, K through 6, and 2 are located in the city of Solana Beach as well as our district office. We are not the only school district. These 2 districts are not the only districts that would be involved. We're talking about San Marcos, San Diego Unified, and Encinitas. So we are among and very concerned school board members, and you are probably aware of some of the rate litigation we've had with the SDG&E over the years in terms of rate inflations for school districts. School board members are very interested in working toward clean energy, not just to be a steward of the planet, but also to set an example for our students and our future leaders. We have solar arrays at both Skyline Elementary, and we'll be installing solar arrays at Solana Vista Elementary during our construction and building remodel beginning in June of this year. And we see ourselves not only as a user, but also we are generating and putting energy on the grid. So we are very interested. I applaud you for the motion you just carried, and we will be here and we will be at the table. We're looking to have 2 board members that will be communicating back to their board what happens here. And those of us that have school that also sit in the city of San Diego, we're using this as a model of how we can negotiate rates and talk to you and be at the table for this very important work. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Kathy Rawlings.
Good morning, and I'm a board member for the Carlsbad Unified School District. However, our superintendent represented us well, so I'm here as a citizen of Carlsbad and a solar user since 2013. I am currently under net metering, which is I'm grandfathered in under net metering, and I pay about $40 a year on my electric bill. And but what happens is that as I become more efficient with my energy use at home, what I find is that if I overgenerate electricity, I'm paid pennies on the dollar by SDG&E in forms of credits. So I would like to hope as you move forward with this effort with the JPA that you will consider those of us that have had solar for a lengthy period of time, if we choose to add or become efficient in our homes, that we might be able to become partners and generators for the JPA and be paid market rate instead of pennies on the dollar for the electricity that could provide incentives for us to be more involved in our community and actually provide clean energy within our city and our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And now moving on to board comments and announcements. Any of my colleagues have anything to share?
I do not.
No? Well, I did want to share one thing. On this Thursday, the Sandag Energy Working Group will be hearing from both the regional JPA, San Diego's regional JPA, as well as the Clean Energy Alliance at the Energy Working Group, Sandag Energy Working Group. That meeting will be at 11 a.m. at Sandag. That's 401 B Street. And the Energy Working Group is contemplating shifting in a direction where that would be a cooperative space for the JPAs in the region to collaborate and really be together as we move forward as an entire region. So, with that, I'd like to move toward presentations. We have a presentation to receive from Beth Vaughn, Executive Director of California Community Choice Association, better known as CalCCA.
Great, and good morning, board. I'll introduce the item and introduce Beth. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Beth Vaughn, who's the Executive Director at CalCCA. CalCCA, among other things, represents the interests of California CCAs in the legislature as well as state agencies. And without further ado, or taking any of your presentation, I'll pass it over to Beth.
Great, thank you. Thanks very much. Congratulations, first of all. We are super excited to welcome San Diego Community Choice energy providers into the CalCCA family. I know it's been many, many years and a lot of hard work, and I want to congratulate all of you. I am here today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. I've put a short PowerPoint together to sort of emphasize what Dan was saying, where our focus has been at the moment. I've got a lot of ideas and vision for, as does the board, for CalCCA of what we could do. But at the moment, I've been the executive director since July of 2017. And since that time, it's just over 2 years, our focus has really been on fighting fires, to be honest with you. We are in the crosshairs at both the regulatory and legislative the regulatory agencies and in the legislature. And so we have many challenges ahead of us. And so what I want to talk to you a little bit about today is the policy arena, both in the regulatory and legal. So if you could click. Great. You've all seen this slide or seen different maps that depict this in many different ways. But I've thrown this up there. This is the current map, as I said at the annual meeting on January 1st. We'll be switching this up. But the reason why I throw this up here is up until 2010, there were not community choice aggregators existing. So in 2010, when we think of California's energy sector, 75% of the retail sales were the responsibility of the investor-owned utilities, PG&E, Edison, and San Diego Gas and Electric. The other 25% was the publicly owned utilities. And life was somewhat stable for the agencies that oversee this arena. A lot of complaints by energy stakeholders that when you do procurement, it's a black box, that the IOUs review procurement offers. There was, calls for unfairness and the utilities not being transparent, those sorts of things. But everybody knew how the game was played. In 2010, a Marine Clean Energy launched, and they were somewhat of a sidebar. I remember actually, I've been in the energy industry here for many, many years, and we would just kind of look at them and go, oh, yeah, okay, we hear what you're saying, but we're not really listening. And back in those days, the IOUs, for instance, would procure on behalf of the energy service providers, the direct access customers, and the CCAs. And there was a lot of tension. Then you have Sonoma Clean Power launching, Lancaster, and it was in 2017 when 5 CCAs launched that suddenly everybody stepped up and took notice. And I remember joining in July and immediately in August being confronted in a very hostile environment in the Senate Energy Committee. It was stacked against the CCAs, I believe, in terms of all of the speakers. And basically you could feel the distrust, this concern of who are these little local governments that are going to come along and start to run our energy sector. And ever since then, I feel that we've been in our focus at CalCCA has been to turn the tide, to really change opinions, to educate, inform, to be able to gather the information of the CCAs and to explain how competent the boards are, their abilities to set rates, to procure energy. And so we've had to combat that not just with the agency folks and with the legislators, but also the stakeholders. So there's many trade associations that operate, particularly up in Sacramento and at the Public Utilities Commission. And so part of our job has been to educate them, to start to partner with them. And I really do feel, and many of you were at the annual meeting, that it was still invite only, and next year we hope to open it up. But we were really focused on getting local government there. But just the fact that we had 500 people show up, many people join as partners in order to participate and to be able to have the detailed subject matter experts there in the workshops. I think it demonstrates what we've really done over the past couple of years, right to the point where Chris Holden, his office, approached us asking if he's the chair of the Assembly Utility and Energy Committee and him wanting to participate. So I think that we've really helped to change public opinion, and that's basically where our focus really is at the moment. So up there, if you can go to the next slide, very high level is kind of the role of CalCCA, and I've touched on some of these things. The top 3 is where a lot of our focus is at the moment, particularly when you're a brand new association, there's no institutional foundation in terms of what you stand for. So we've been having to develop a policy platform from scratch. And if you go on our website, on our policy page, you'll see our policy platform, and we review it regularly, but we do an update every year. And then also, you'll see all of our filings. So for instance, in October, if you look there, there's 20 filings, I think, at least 20 that we did, just to explain the heavy workload. And these are CalCCA regulatory cases, and we are not involved in all of the cases. Many of the CCAs jointly file in some of the various subject areas. But here's basically what we're trying to do at CalCCA, the umbrella. If you could go to the next slide. These are some of the challenges that we face, and it is this transition, right? It's the fear of the unknown, quite honestly. So the agencies and the legislature are concerned about the load shifting, about there being stranded costs, and how do we make sure there's equity there? That's, all of you are familiar with the power charge and difference adjustment, which can be a whole nother topic we can discuss. But there is this tension between centralized and decentralized oversight. So what we're seeing, while the concern, what they love to do with 3 investor-owned utilities that represents 75% of the retail load, we had this hybrid market. We have the independent system operator, with the CalISO, with the market that operates there, energy market, not a capacity market. And then you have the social engineering of the state saying, yes, but we want to make sure that we incentivize solar or incentivize battery storage, or we like pump storage better than geothermal. And they create these mandates and then say to the Public Utilities Commission, now you will regulate the investor-owned utilities and ensure that we get these results. Well, they can't do that with community choice aggregators. You're the board, you determine the rates, you determine the procurement, and that has people uneasy. They're very unsure of how does this all fit together? What's the plan for the state? So these are the areas that we are in there defending the rights of the CCAs, particularly around self-procurement and autonomy, and yet at the same time showing that we're part of this collective, that we do actually want to be part of the overall plan. We're here with very clear goals. I think for many of you, it's in your mission statements, it's in your climate action plans, why you formed a CCA. So those are the areas we're working. I'm not going to go through all of these, but there is a lot of different issues, a lot of distrust, and you see them show up in bills in the legislature and also through the proliferation of new proceedings at the Public Utilities Commission in particular. So if we flip to the next slide. What I did is I sort of grouped this in terms of how we are starting to look at this at CalCCA, because we do have to create some swim lanes. At CalCCA, we lead in terms of the board decides this. We take strategy memos to the board and determine where we are going to take the lead and where joint CCAs may take the lead. But integrated resource planning, resource adequacy, power charge and difference adjustment, direct access, and then some over in the climate environmental issue areas, particularly where they bleed together. Something new this year, if you look there on under the reliability planning, is the CalISO stakeholder initiatives. And what we're finding there is, particularly with this question around reliability in the state, and you'll learn this, is with the CPUC and the CalISO, sometimes we're asking who's on first. Who sets the rules and who implements it? And if you're not present in both areas, for instance, just being present to have the discussion about how do you count storage plus solar. If I have a compliance obligation, I want to make sure I'm meeting the obligation. I want to make sure it makes sense. And at the moment, some of those hybrid resources are not counted, so we're not getting credit for that. Anyways, there's a smattering of exciting proceedings to be involved in your future, but be assured you don't have to do it all. And we have different CCAs targeted in different areas, and then CalCCA with an overview. If you flip to the next slide. I've just thrown up there, and I'm sure your consultants and staff will help you understand this, but as a load-serving entity, and there are 44 of those in the state at the moment, you have compliance obligations. And I've thrown up there a partial list. You can see the frequency, the agency. A lot of this is around renewable portfolio standards or resource adequacy. Integrated resource plan there is at the bottom on the right-hand side. But I'll tell you that within that, simply based on some decisions that were made on November 7th, there's another whole set of compliance obligations. And you as a CCA, standing up as CCA, will have to file an integrated resource plan on March 1st of 2020. And you'll have help with that. The other thing I wanted to mention, though, within CalCCA is we do work on best practices, and we have a culture of sharing. So one of the things that it's just being peer reviewed at the moment, but this has been worked on for quite a while, is a 2019 compliance guidebook that we'll be able to give you and your staff, so you don't have to start from scratch. And again, there's templates and there's assistance as you move forward. All right, if you can flip to the next one. So in 2019, these were the key proceedings, and I said this I've been saying this to a lot of folks. The problem with these cases and proceedings, as you make a decision, you have a strategy about how you're going to go forward, and you cost it out, and then they multiply by like rabbits. So the power charge and difference adjustment, many of you would remember a year ago we had a decision on that. That was phase 1. We are in phase 2 now. We have 3 different working groups. We co-chair some of these groups with some of the IOUs. It goes on and on. The same with resource adequacy, multiple tracks, integrated resource planning. Again, another subject area that you'll want to be briefed on, but there are multiple tracks in that, and we've just had the procurement track out of the last cycle of the IRP, which has directed new procurement. As you can see, there's also hot issues come up like de-energization, which is huge, and the public safety power shutoff program, and that's another issue we can talk about. But what we do have there, as you see, is a regulatory committee, and so what the CCA's figured is that there's economies of scale here, and if we work together on some of these problems, we can be a lot more proactive in these areas. So in this past year, for instance, and I think this is where we've gained the trust of folks, is that we drove in the resource adequacy proceeding. You may remember that there was AB 56, Assembly Bill 56, to set up a central buyer, which was a huge threat to what you do. While we opposed that successfully in the legislature, what we were doing in the background was working with a whole lot of other stakeholders to put together a plan around reliability, which was then filed as a settlement agreement. It's now the focus of the conversation with commissioners. Even Commissioner Leanne Randolph, who's the assigned commissioner, acknowledged that there are elements of this that she very much likes. The question of who might run it is still out there. So anyways, these is a smattering of those things. If we flick to the next slide, we also have a legislative committee, and both the regulatory committee and legislative committee have our staff committees that recommend up to the board, and then the board takes action. We must have the approval to move forward. Here again, in 2019, were some key pieces of legislation. You can see opposes concerns, support if amended. And actually, I have a score sheet that I don't know why I don't have it up there in terms of basically we were extremely successful across the board. And even bills that we opposed, we were able to get significant amendments to. And that to me is a testament. I mean, we did not have that in 2017 and even in 2018. In 2019 now we have a physical presence in Sacramento. We have a legislative director. We have 4 lobbyists. And what our lobbyists do up there as well is meet with everyone else's lobbyists. So if any CCA has a lobbyist or you have a city or county lobbyist, we're quite a force actually during those end of day days in August at the end of the session. We can deploy, and it's become much more organized. And that's actually something I did want to mention is that's where we really rely upon you as council members. And that's why I'm awfully excited to have San Diego representatives here, is the ability to contact you as electeds. You're the ones that have the relationships with your state legislators, and that's where we find we've been most impactful. We do not have a PAC. We cannot contribute money to individual legislators, and so we rely upon our network, and we've been enormously successful last year, and we're getting a lot more organized. So we look forward to doing that with you, and I should have also mentioned that in the regulatory arena as well. We coordinate on messaging, like right now on the power charge and difference adjustment, which there has been an increase across all 3 IOUs this year to such a point that it may require a trigger mechanism. So what we're doing is coordinating around messaging, around numbers, and then identifying how do we go forward. And again, that's where I find the elected officials are most helpful, both in meetings with commissioners as well as reaching out to legislators. So I think many of you attended the luncheon that we had, and this year we want to really execute. We've got this subcommittee forming with Jan Pepper leading, our board member, to organize around how we'll be able to coordinate with all of you. Can you go to the next slide, please? And I just have 2 more. So just in terms of 2020, we're beginning the second year of a 2-year cycle. So although I mentioned AB 56, we defeated it, but it's still alive because it's a 2-year cycle. So 56 could come back. Hertzberg had 350. There's a number of them up here, and we have many more, but these ones we are very aware of, also because some of them have shown up in print and not been introduced. So for instance, Scott Wiener's got one around PSPS. Hueso indicated, and I think this is the San Vicente project, so we want to work very closely with all of you. We never want to take an opposing position to one of our CCAs. But it's different from SB 772, which was the pump storage that included the NextEra project. AB 235 was in print but didn't get introduced, and this has to do with PG&E. They were sponsoring this bill and tried very hard to get us to support it, which also signified to me that we were definitely a player now in Sacramento. But if we could go to the next slide. As you can see, that spills over AB 235 into what we see coming for 2020. And overwhelmingly, it is all about the utilities and what is going on. So I know you're here in San Diego. I know that you've experienced PSPSs, but up in Northern California, we had not really experienced them until June was the first time. And when you have, particularly Silicon Valley being told they could be out of power, turned off for 7 days, people get pretty upset, particularly when there's not really a backup system. A lot of folks had diesel generators, some microgrids were in action, or some hospitals that might have had combined heat and power, they were okay, but not in the long term. So this is really the focus, and I think it will override all legislation that we see in terms of the energy sector. This is a big discussion going on. We at Cal CCA are working on a set of principles. We're not supporting one idea over another. Some of our individual CCAs are. Obviously, I think people have heard about Mayor Sam Liccardo leading the idea around a cooperative. Again, we're kind of respectful of each of our CCAs. San Francisco wants to municipalize, but at the same time, we're being looked to for public comment on this, and we'll probably be part of, there was a Senate hearing on this on Monday, and I expect the Assembly will do that as well. So I'm going to stop there. These you've seen before. I mean, other things that we do in terms of tracking and communicating. This is part of how we build that trust with the sector groups and with the stakeholders. Again, I think some of you have heard me. We've done a lot of work with the renewable developers this past year, with the trade associations. We got them, they were supporting AB 56. We got them to back off and oppose it along with us. Out of our discussions with them, we realized we needed to be talking more to the financing community. So on October 15th, we held a roundtable with CCAs, project developers, and the financing community, the project lenders, tax equity. So these are the sorts of areas we get into because we were trying to nut through what is it that you need to make yourself comfortable if a CCA doesn't have a credit rating, that they are credit worthy. And I'll tell you, some of it's low-hanging fruit. Things like opt-out rates are really important. Well, we track those. We call them participation rates. We like to be on the positive side of things. But as soon as I threw that up, which we have on our website for everyone, and said, well, we can give you the last 3 years worth, the air went out of the room. It was like, wow, oh, okay. We didn't realize they're all over 90%. This is a good thing. So the examples like that, when we plan to do more of that with the with a lot of the other stakeholders like labor, for instance, we really think that there's a partnership we could have at individual CCA levels. They have very good relationships with their unions. In fact, we have a map. It's also available on our website that shows all of the projects to date and the different union labor. Legislature loves things like that. So this is the kind of the information that we gather from all of you, and then we provide it. It's available for all of you to use as well in your advocacy. Anyways, so those are the sorts of things. The final slide I'll leave you with, and you can't read it. You're not meant to be able to read it. And there's actually a live link in there. What we do as well is track the programs, because at the end of the day, I know all of you get really excited about the possibilities of what you can do in your communities. So again, in terms of best practice sharing, we have tried to collect, catalog. We have that link on the left goes to the website where we've put up a page that links out under different types of programs like electric vehicle incentives, for instance. You can open it up and link out directly to Sonoma, Marin, Silicon Valley, and you'll have at your fingertips the information about their programs and what they've done. And you can look and see if it's something that you'd be interested in. What we want to do is head towards actually evaluating those and looking at what really makes a best practice. But yeah, all of that's available. So I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. And I'm happy to leave this, Greg, I promised, or Dan, I promised that to you.
Was there any follow-up from staff?
No follow-up from staff. As you know, Clean Energy Alliance and our partnership is an affiliate member of CalCCA at this point, and we have included in your draft budget for the fiscal year, continuing that and increasing that to a full membership for next year once the CCA is operational.
Thank you very much.
And perhaps on that point, I can just point out, so we review membership membership dues methodologies. And so I have at this annual meeting, they voted in a new slate of officers, and Girish Balachandran from Silicon Valley Clean Energy is my new treasurer. And we already met last week. He'll be taking the lead at reviewing those membership dues and forming a board committee to do so. That was the agreement when we passed we try to really keep things equitable. We're very conscious of the small folks and the large folks. And your options for being on the board or not being on the board. And at the moment, how it works is everyone has the same voting privileges. There's no weighted voting. CalCCA.
Thank you very much. I'd
Okay.
like to turn to my colleagues, see if there's any questions.
I do. Thank you,
Okay,
Beth, so much for coming down here. I really
Sure.
appreciate it. And the work that you do at CalCCA, I've seen now how important it is, all that stuff. I'm glad you understand it. So thank you so much. But I do kind of notice that most all of the work has been in Northern California, and SDG&E is a new customer kind of to you guys. So is there anyone assigned to us? Or I know a lot of the issues overlap, but even that last slide looked like a lot of Northern California things. So
Right.
do you see any issues down here that you can
So my
forecast?
vision would be to have regional offices. I just think it's so important, and there's so much to do. However, I've been very conscious of the San Diego area from day one when I came on, particularly when I first met with all the board members and I said, what are your top 3 priorities? And they said, PCIA, PCIA, PCIA. And so right from day one, we've been very conscious of how San Diego Gas and Electric's long-term or portfolio will impact CCAs that form here. And in phase 1, MRW is a consultancy out of Oakland. And I know that they had worked with the city of San Diego. So from day one, we've had them inside of the consulting family. And even yesterday, they were participating on a call we had around the PCIA with the board and some of the staff. And so we were looking at SDG&E's stuff. So already we're anticipating, and of course we have Solana Energy Alliance and their consultants they work with. So they're also part of the family that we work with.
So don't forget about us.
Absolutely not. No, that's why I'm here.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Haviland?
Yes, a comment and a question. Just wanted to thank you for that great conference up in Redondo Beach that we all attended. Learned a ton. Learned a ton about what I still don't know. So it's a beginning of, I think, a long learning process, and that was a great start. So thank you for that. My question is around, are there, as we get started and the importance of autonomy for CCAs is critical to everybody, and I know how hard you all are working to protect that. Are there metrics that we should be gathering or that are consolidated on a state level that would show the impact on resiliency and reliability, how we're greening the grid faster than state mandates? Are there things that CCA should be collaborating on from a data management perspective that would help us with legislators or with financing or all these things that you're promoting
Great
out there?
question. So I am very fact-based. I have a science background, so I'm data rich. And I have now on the team a former Edison employee who was also a ledge person who actually is a data geek out of UC Davis. And we also added part-time, we have a PhD student working with us from UC Davis. And so in just this last 9 months, one of the things that we've started is a compliance committee. And now as the CCAs file their compliance filings with all the different agencies, they also file them with us. And that has been really helpful. So for instance, I get the question, so you'll get this question from the staff consultants to the legislative committees. Okay, Beth, how are the CCAs doing in terms of their RPS obligations, right? How about the requirement under SB 350 for long-term contracts? By 2024, 65% of your contracts have to be long-term. And so we're able now, with that data that we've gotten, to generate an aggregated view, but also individually for each CCA, and being able to identify those that maybe need some help, and have been able to do that with them, or pair them with a CCA that can help them with that. On the other hand, we also can create a narrative around that. Well, you're so small that, one single 20-year contract of 20 megawatts is going to provide everything you need. So we're getting better at that, but we will come to you for data, absolutely. If you go to the website, we do have a CCAs by the numbers. It's an Excel spreadsheet, basically, and they love it. Up there it says your number of customer accounts, your annual load, how many gigawatt hours. I mean, they're very simple numbers, but aggregated together, they begin to tell the story. And I think many of you saw the graphs I was able to put up that shows the departing load, those sorts of things. So we will come to you. That we have a marketing committee that collects that kind of data. So thank you for the question. That's what is so convincing with the independent system operator, and we can present that to the Cal ISO or to the legislature. Really helps our arguments.
And thank you very much for coming up. Just like my colleagues, the Redondo conference was really enlightening and highlighted a lot of things and a lot of acronyms that it's been fun to dig into. My question, I've got two questions. Well, the first, I just wanted to highlight one of the most interesting pieces of the conference was really the how dynamic the regulatory environment is, and our opportunity as an emerging CCA in this space to be able to impact legislation moving forward, I know is really important. So thank you for forming the subcommittee, and I'm looking forward to learning more about that as somebody who volunteered to serve on that subcommittee. In a lot of these conversations, one of the things we talk about is resource adequacy, compliance. But one of the things I'm curious about is, as we're shifting toward new ways of generating power in the clean and green renewable energy space, I'm curious about what workforce adequacy we actually have, where there's training programs for folks who may have worked in fossil fuel industries and might be transitioning or need to transition toward more clean, green jobs. Do you have any data around that or any insight into that?
So we are. It's a really great question. This is another, not fight we're having with the Public Utilities Commission, but there is the supply diversity. GO 156, and every year there's an en banc with all 5 commissioners and with some legislators, and the IOUs must report out on their supplier diversity. We've tried to introduce into that workforce diversity along the lines of what you're talking about. So we actually have a publication, it's online, and I can email it to you, that we produced for October 2018 when I had to appear at the en banc, called Beyond Supplier Diversity. And what we did is we, through our Environmental Justice and Social Equity Staff Committee, went out and gathered information from all of the CCAs about what they were doing, what workforce policies they may have, but also what they were doing on the ground. And we were able to compile that and produce this report that I'll share. But what we also did in January of 2018 is co-hosted in Richmond with MCE a supplier diversity forum, and we got a couple of commissioners to come and listen. And to your point, when MCE has at the Chevron site there, they partnered, they've built a 10 megawatt solar array there, facility, and they used Richmond Build, which is a workforce development program that takes folks and retrains them and provides them with opportunities. And this was a training ground for them. I mean, the stories were amazing because the panels were full of these people who had been given a second chance out of prison or single moms, or, it was just incredible. And we would love to replicate that in Southern California. In fact, I've been asked by the PUC if we could do something like that. So I'm talking with Lancaster and others in Clean Power Alliance. So it's a great question, and it's a really important area. So like I said, we have the staff committee. It's a concern at the board level. And it's something every year I think about, how are we going to not just go out and collect metrics, but encourage this workforce diversity as well.
Thank you very much. And would you imagine that the subcommittee would be an effective location to
I
help?
would love that. In fact, could I also suggest, because you are on the subcommittee, if you have any other ideas, I know you mentioned acronyms, for instance, and I know a new board member from a CCA said to me, could you just even, like, it's so simple, just throw up a set of acronyms for us on the website? Absolutely. These are little things that we can do, again, like low-hanging fruit. So if you have ideas around that, I know we're talking about maybe doing a CCA 101. Each of these topic areas I touched on are very confusing. We have some materials, they just need to be kind of pulled together, and maybe we offer, webinars where we can walk people through. We don't even have to physically come. But again, like I said, I have a vision of so many things we can do, not just fight the fires over in regulatory and ledge. And I look forward to that day where I'm not doing that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Any further questions from my colleagues? All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Vaughn. We really appreciate you coming down.
Great. Well, thank you.
Okay, and with that, please.
Good morning, board. Again, it's my pleasure to introduce the next presenter, Barbara Boswell from Bayshore Consulting Group, who developed the draft implementation plan for your consideration and direction today. Ms. Boswell will give a general overview of the plan, then be available for questions and direction, with the plan to then have staff come back at the December 19th with the final draft or final implementation plan for consideration and approval. So with that, I'll pass it over to Barbara.
Good morning, Chair, Vice Chair, and Board Member Becker. It's my pleasure to be here to provide an overview of the Clean Energy Alliance draft Community Choice Aggregation Implementation Plan. This is an exciting time for the cities of Del Mar, Carlsbad, and Solana Beach, and this is the first official step in moving towards establishing the Community Choice Aggregation Program. If I can take just a moment to introduce myself. Before focusing my career on community choice aggregation, I spent 25 years in local government, municipal government. I was the finance director for the city of Lancaster at the time they moved forward and looked at creating a CCA and then established their CCA and then managed the operations for their first year. I'd also like to introduce Jeff Fuller. Jeff is here from the Energy Authority. He is one of the partners that supports Solana Beach and Solana Energy Alliance, and he provided the technical tables that appear in the implementation plan, and he's available for questions should you have any with regards to that. So, next slide. So, community choice aggregation was authorized through Assembly Bill 117, which was approved in 2002, and that's what provides the authority for Clean Energy Alliance to move forward and establish their CCA program. In addition, the Public Utilities Code has sections that specifically identify the steps that need to be taken for establishing the CCA, and also establishes that the CCA is an opt-out program. So all of the customers within your territory are automatically enrolled unless they take action to opt out. So the implementation plan really is a regulatory compliance document, and it provides the framework that identifies the CCA's goals, as well as including specifically identified sections that are within the Public Utilities Code. The board, as you move forward in working on the implementation, you still have discretion and will be making policy decisions related to meeting the goals of your CCA program. So this really is your regulatory compliance document that will be filed with the PUC. And included in the implementation plan is also required to be a statement of intent, and that statement of intent must state that the CCA will provide universal access, reliability, equitable treatment of all classes of customers, and that we will meet the requirements established by state law or the Public Utilities Commission with regards to the application of greenhouse gas emission performance standards. All of these the draft implementation plan that was provided to you does meet the requirements of the Public Utilities Code. It's also modeled after implementation plans that have been drafted and successfully certified by the Public Utilities Commission. And it's, I think, a distinction. The Public Utilities Commission doesn't approve the plan. It merely certifies that it includes all of the required elements of the code. In order to be able to serve customers in 2021, the plan does need to be filed with the Commission by January 1st of 2020. And then the Commission has 90 days to review and either respond with questions or certify that the plan doesn't meet the requirements. So the implementation plan does make certain assumptions upon which the tables that you saw were developed. Included in that are that the founding members are the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach, and that Solana Energy Alliance customers will transition from Solana Energy Alliance service to Clean Energy Alliance service. The target months that was used for developing the data and the tables was May 2021. And one of the reasons that month is selected is that it does provide the optimal cash flows for a new CCA. It results in the CCA serving customers before summer when you have the peak demands and revenue flows tend to be higher at that point in time. However, the board will have discretion and the ability to adjust that date should circumstances warrant or the decision to be made that another launch month might be more beneficial. It does also assume that customers are enrolled in a single phase, so all of the customers of Clean Energy Alliance within all 3 cities would transition in the same month. The only exception to that could be net energy metering customers. Those customers could be enrolled over multiple periods, and that will be one of the decisions that the board will be contemplating, and information will be brought forward to you with regards to those customers. There are implications to net energy metering customers with regards to when they move away from their current service and into Clean Energy Alliance that we want to minimize the impact and mitigate that impact by maybe looking at different enrollment periods for them. We also assumed that the opt-out rate for Clean Energy Alliance is 10%, and you heard from Beth Vaughn that actually all of the CCAs have opt-out rates that are lower than that, but that is a conservative approach in developing the tables and the financial assumptions for Clean Energy Alliance. Sorry? Participation rate of 90%, that's correct. So in addition to assumptions with regards to customer base and enrollment, we also make assumptions with regards to energy supply. So the Clean Energy Alliance Joint Powers Agreement did identify goals in terms of providing energy that exceeds that of San Diego Gas and Electric, and identified the goal of offering the default product at 50% renewable sourced, and a voluntary opt-up option. And there were 2 options identified, a 90% and 100%. The plan does focus on the 100% because there is really no cost differential between offering a 90% or 100%, and the rate would really be the same for the customers. And to move forward to meeting the climate action plans of the members, it is likely the 100% renewable option would be the one option you might want to consider. However, again, the board will still have discretion to identify programs and other alternatives should it decide as you move through the process of making these decisions with regards to your program. In terms of a rate, the Joint Powers Agreement does also identify a goal of a minimum target 2% discount as compared to San Diego Gas and Electric, and so that rate discount was also built into the implementation plan and the pro forma as presented to you. These goals were also confirmed by the board at your first meeting of November the 5th. Then some information with regards to the customer makeup of Clean Energy Alliance. We have 86% of the customers are residential customers, and 14% are non-residential. So that would include commercial, industrial, streetlights, other services that are not considered residential. So this chart, this pro forma is based on the assumptions that were mentioned earlier in terms of the revenues are based on a 2% discount from SDG&E rates, offering a default energy product that is sourced from 50% renewable and is based on today's market in terms of SDG&E rates as well as the cost of energy for 50% renewable. And you can see that based on today's market that the revenues do exceed expenses and results in net revenues that can be put into reserves and accumulated for programs. And so it is a financially viable program looking into the future. I would like to stress that this pro forma is based on today's market, and that market changes every day. And so this pro forma will change, and we will continue to update it and provide the board with the updates as we have them. The most significant change will come in January when SDG&E implements its rates for 2020, and that's likely the next time that we would be updating and bringing forward to you the new pro forma, because we do, your rates are generally based against SDG&E rates, and so they have a significant impact on your pro forma. So next steps. So the next steps in terms of what where we go with the implementation plan is recommending that the board schedule the adoption for December the 19th, your next meeting, and that then you provide direction to file it with the PUC by December 31st in order to remain open for a 2021 launch. There's also other actions that will need to be taken by Clean Energy Alliance during that 90-day period that the implementation is in review. Those include preparing and approving and filing a draft customer notice, and that is to be filed with the PUC for their review. Also preparing, approving, and filing a renewable portfolio standards procurement plan. It's a draft plan. We will need to execute this community choice aggregation service agreement with SDG&E and file that along with the CCA bond, which is set at $147,000 with the PUC. Once all of those boxes are checked and the CPU certifies the implementation plan, you become registered as a community choice aggregation program in California. And that does conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. We do have one speaker for this item. We would like to go to questions first, or we would like to do the public comment and then do questions and comments afterwards. Okay, excellent. Thank you. Thank you. We'll ask questions after the public comment.
Katie Scanlon.
Good morning, council members and staff. My name is Katie Scanlon. I'm with San Diego Gas and Electric. And I just briefly wanted to talk about the timeline that was outlined in the staff packet that was distributed in regards to this first agenda item. Some of you might be aware that SDG&E is in the process of replacing the majority of our customer service systems, with one of the most important ones being our billing function. We got approval from the CPUC to go through this business transformation project back in 2016, and it's a long 5-year project that's very complex that we are planning to officially launch in January of 2021. The most important piece to this is a 6-month stabilization period that will be required once we actually turn on the new system, which is why I'm here today, because the timeline that was originally mentioned in the packet mentioned May of 2021 for an anticipated launch date for the JPA. So it will be really important to work with staff on this and really work together as we continue to build this new system and ready for it to be onboarded to support the CCAs. There's going to be a lot of new functionality that will really enable and support future CCA adoption in our region. So we would like to request a meeting with the JPA to really sit down with our systems team that's leading this important business transformation project. So as you guys are making decisions about, one of them that was just mentioned was transitioning NEM customers, what that plan looks like, different plan options that you could decide on that you would like to offer through your CCA. Those will all be important things for us to know on the SDG&E side, so we can continue to build our system to support your needs when you do launch. So as soon as possible, we would love to meet with you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Do you have any questions for the speaker? Okay. I just wanted to clarify with staff. Thank you very much, Ms. Scanlon. I wanted to clarify with staff that the appropriate time for that conversation might be when we bring an executive director on board, or when would you perceive that to be a good time?
Yes, I think that's probably the best timing, as well as our data management consultant as well. When Solana Energy Alliance was developing, we started meeting with SCG&E well ahead of the launch to start working through the different systems and the testing, and that was a great help having their expertise on board. So I think once we get both those on board would be the appropriate time.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Okay, and now turning it over to any questions and comments about this item from my colleagues. Ms. Becker?
I do have some questions on the implementation plan, and so maybe Barb, first of all, thank you so much for that presentation, and thank you for all your help over this 2-year period with SEA. You've been amazing and helpful, and I've only heard raving reviews about you, so thank you. I just have a few things on page 8 of the implementation plan. It says that the SEA customers will receive these notices as they're transitioning from SEA to CEA. They will also have multiple opportunities to opt out. So is it the same process that 60-day period they will, our customers in Solana Beach who have already had that opportunity to opt out, are they going to have do that all over again?
No, they're not. So you're correct. Solana Energy Alliance customers have already had their 60 days before departing from San Diego Gas and Electric and 60 days after to opt out. But we do want to do, I think, I don't want to call it significant noticing, but we do want to reach out to the customers and provide adequate noticing so they understand what's happening, what the implications are, what the rate changes might be. And through that process, customers may decide, we hope not, but they may decide, but there's no required opt-out noticing like there will be for the Del Mar and Carlsbad customers who will be leaving SDG&E for the first time.
Okay, great. And anyone can opt out at any time. I mean, I know there's rules, but
and we'll clarify that in the implementation plan.
Okay, great. And then let's see. Let me go to my next. And I should have asked this when we were talking about the proposed budget, but on one of the tables, it says the CAISO fee is $500,000 for fiscal year 2021. Could you tell me a little bit about that? And is that fee the same for every CCA, whether you're small or big or anything?
Yeah, so there is a fee, the $500,000 fee to register with the California Independent System Operators and participate in the Congestion Revenue Rights program. And as a new CCA, you would be required to post that $500,000. Solana Energy Alliance did not have to because they were part of the city of Solana Beach, and Solana Beach met the financial requirements to not have to post that money, but because Clean Energy Alliance is a new CCA without the minimum financial backing, that would be required. There are opportunities with partners as we go through the selection process, or as you go through the selection process for energy providers or data managers, where that could be an item that is considered a deferred fee, or something that the supplier might be willing to help with, and help with the initial cash flow of Clean Energy Alliance.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and I think that's all for now. Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Ms. Haviland?
Yes, a couple questions. Thank you. Could you just clarify for me how the PCA vintage works? How it works for Solana Beach customers, how it works for the Del Mar and Carlsbad customers moving forward, and how that will change, and if that will change over time?
I'm happy to. So the power charge indifference adjustment, also known as PCIA and also known as the exit fee, is a charge that is charged by San Diego Gas and Electric to customers who leave their service and begin taking service from CCA customers. There are different vintages, so customers who depart is the official word, depart between the months of January and June are assigned the vintage of the prior year. Those that depart July through December are assigned a vintage of the current year. And so the significance of the vintage is that's the point in time where SDG&E will look at their portfolio of contracts and determine which contracts are related to that group of customers leaving, and then uses that as a benchmark for then in future years determining whether when they liquidate those contracts, because now they represent power that they no longer have customers to provide to. They look at, they use certain methodologies, and those methodologies are not easily calculated, and it was one of the items with regards to the PCIA Phase 1 proceeding that Beth mentioned. But they determine a value, a current market value as compared to the cost value, and then if there's a loss, that loss is then spread amongst the CCA customers in a particular vintage. For Solana Energy Alliance customers, they have already departed SDG&E service and have already received their vintage, which is 2017 is the vintage for Solana Energy Alliance. They will keep that vintage because they're not going back to SDG&E and coming, so they've already been assigned. But for Carlsbad and Del Mar customers, at the point in time they do depart, they will then be assigned a vintage. And then every year through what's called the ERA rate setting process, the utilities do look at their accounts to determine what the balance is and how much they need to collect in the coming year to fill the gap between what the value of those contracts are versus what was paid for those contracts. And the purpose is so that when the customers remaining with SDG&E are not negatively impacted, they're left indifferent, which is where the power charge indifference comes from. They're indifferent to whether customers leave SDG&E or not.
So can we assume that an earlier vintage is more advantageous or not?
Not necessarily. It depends on the cost basis of the contracts in that portfolio. And it could be that those contracts were acquired at a time when the energy market was priced higher, and they could have a higher a cost basis than a vintage that is a later year.
And there's no changing that in case SEA wanted to say, okay, that one's absolved. Can we see what that one is? And shop it a bit? Or
unfortunately, no. Once a group of customers has departed the utility service and become a CCA customer, they're assigned a vintage and they keep that vintage. Over time, theoretically, the PCIA should go down because those contracts are rolling off. So over time, you should be seeing a decrease in the dollar amount of the PCIA that's charged. But there's no changing it.
okay, and then just one, does the CEA have the flexibility to not base its rates on SDG&E?
That is a great question, and you do have that flexibility to not base your rates on SDG&E. One of the, I think, key factors in a CCA considering that is to help the customers with understanding the rates and being able to easily compare what the rate implications or what the cost implications are for staying with SDG&E as opposed to staying with Clean Energy Alliance. And we are required to provide what's called a joint rate comparison, and it's much easier to do if the rates are similarly based. But you certainly, as a board, would have the opportunity to look at offering other rates or basing your rates on other factors.
Just a couple more clarifications. For the net metering customers, is it a commitment that we're making to offer them in this plan as it's written? Are we committing to offering them a better rate for their excess energy than SDG&E, or is it a want to do versus a we will do?
The plan, as it's written, says that you may consider offering net energy metering programs and rates, but there's no specific rate set at this point. The board will consider your rates in the future, including what rates will you set for the excess generation that customers may have as compared to what's being offered by SDG&E. Those are decisions the board would make in the future.
In the future, okay. And then one other minor thing that was unclear to me, the general counsel, does the general counsel report to the CEO, to the board, or to both? It was a little unclear in the language.
The general counsel reports to the board.
Okay.
Day to day, they would work collaboratively with the CEO. You know.
Did you want to add?
Yeah, we did a little tweak to the implementation plan to try to better describe that. But as Barb just said, that's exactly how this works. General counsel reports and accountable to the board. But on a day-to-day basis, we are working directly with the CEO and staff.
That makes sense, thank you. That was all I had.
Okay. Okay. And I just had a couple of follow-up questions. We covered the net energy metering. Thank you. And some of the earlier comments related to vintage. That was actually a very helpful conversation and clarification there. Thank you. I wanted to highlight a couple of things. The section 6.2, which is the resource plan overview. I just wanted to clarify that this also includes any partnerships with other JPAs. It says on page 25, it says, as an alternative to direct investment, CEA may consider partnering with an experienced public power developer, et cetera, et cetera. And I also wanted to make sure that this would also include any partnerships with other CCA JPAs in this space.
We can add that. So we can specifically add that. It's having it not in here doesn't preclude you from being able to, but we can add that, should the board like to have that added.
Okay. I'll turn to my colleagues. Is that something that you'd like to? The resource plan overview is just on the energy generation side, and we've zeroed in on partnering with experienced public power developers or long-term power purchase agreements, but we haven't explicitly stated that we also intend to look for JPA partnerships. And I've heard from my colleagues that that's something that's important to them. It's also important to me. Was that language that you would be comfortable adding into the agreement?
Yes, I think that'd be a good addition. Thank you.
So I would like to make that motion to add, and then we can, if you've got a second. Okay. We'll go ahead and add that officially. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. And then I wanted to get some clarification around, this is going to be on page 27 of the agreement. On the very bottom of the page.
On which section? That I think the numbering.
My apologies. This is section 6.7, capacity requirements.
Okay, thank you.
So this section says CEA is also required to demonstrate that a specified portion of its capacity meets certain operational flexibility requirements. I'm hoping you can just kind of give some clarity around what that specifically is.
So resource adequacy has, there are three different types of resource adequacy. There's flexible, system, and local. And what this is stating is that we would ensure that Clean Energy Alliance's capacity met the flexible standards that are placed on you by the California Energy Commission and the CPUC.
Okay, and that's specific to the RA framework.
Right.
Okay, so then that kind of goes to what we were hearing about earlier about needing to keep up very specifically with compliance and what potential future projects might help us to accomplish that. Yep. So it's going to be really important for us to stay engaged in that legislative and regulatory space. Okay, thank you very much for that. And those are all the questions that I have.
Okay, and if I can just clarify one item, there was a question with regards to rates and how rates are set, and are we required to stay tighter with setting them based on SDG&E? I do want to clarify that our Clean Energy Alliance would be considering setting rates just on the generation portion of SDG&E's rate structure and not the total rate or including the delivery side. Because there are two components to the electric rates currently from SDG&E. It's the delivery side and then generation. And so Clean Energy Alliance would be replacing SDG&E's generation rate.
And those are all conversations we're going to have around rate setting. So thank you very much. And comment by staff.
And just to clarify on the presentation, when Barb said the 2% rate discount, that was a 2% on the generation side, not on the total bill.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Dan.
And then I believe, Mr. Haber, we had something additional on this item.
No, just looking for a board motion probably to schedule the public hearing for your next meeting, December 19th, to schedule the public hearing and approve the implementation plan.
Did we have an item in here as far as the 4-year reimbursement versus 3-year? Is that in this?
That's on your next item
Okay.
on your agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'd be looking for a motion to set the public hearing date.
I move that staff set a public hearing date for December 19th to approve the implementation plan.
Second?
All right. And go ahead and vote. And that motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And moving on to item 2 on the agenda. Staff want to introduce that item?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, board members. Jason Haber. So this item is to consider an agreement among Clean Energy Alliance and member agencies for payment and reimbursement of initial costs. And the recommendation is that you approve that agreement as stated among CEA and the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach. The background on this is provided in Government Code Section 6504, which authorizes parties to a JPA to make advances to the Joint Powers Authority that may be repaid to those parties once the JPA becomes operational. Section 73.2 of the Joint Powers Agreement for Clean Energy Alliance provides that the initial program costs would be divided equally among the founding members, and that once the program becomes operational, Clean Energy Alliance will repay those advances to the founding members. Section 7.3.3 of that agreement also provides that Clean Energy Alliance may establish a reasonable time period over which the costs of CCA feasibility and governance studies that are conducted by the member agencies in preparation for forming the JPA may also be recovered from CCA customers and reimbursed to the parties in the future. So on November 5th, the CEA board reviewed our draft initial budget, and that was set at $450,000 for the current fiscal year ending June 30th of 2020. And you directed staff to and authorized that we go out and request from the member agencies advances in the amount of $150,000 each to fund the initial costs. At this point, we can report that all 3 of the member agency governing bodies, city councils from the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Solana Beach have all approved that advance in the amount of $150,000 each on the terms that are suggested in this agreement, which that's the area that we need to note a couple of minor adjustments, which are rather than stating a 4-year repayment term, we're looking at a 3-year repayment term. All of those would be on 0% interest, so no interest loans to the JPA. So there are a couple of changes in the agreement that are before you, which we'll highlight in a moment, but get to that 3-year repayment term and the back end closure on the term of the agreement to be in 2024 rather than 2025. So the agreement provides for payment and reimbursement of the initial costs for CEA and the reimbursement of costs incurred by member agencies in preparing their feasibility studies and governance reports in connection with establishing Clean Energy Alliance's CCA program. Again, the terms of that agreement, $150,000 from each member agency to be paid within 15 days of receiving notice that Clean Energy Alliance has established a bank account for the authority's operations. The member agency contributions, again, would be repaid within 3 years. As you heard already, service by Clean Energy Alliance is anticipated to commence in May 2021, so repayment by May of 2024 would be anticipated, and then no repayment of those initial costs would be required if the CCA program doesn't become operational through Clean Energy Alliance. So each of the member agencies are at risk for that amount in the event that CCA does not launch through Clean Energy Alliance. Same applies for the costs associated with feasibility and governance reports. And then finally, that fixed term would be amended to state that it expires June 30th, 2024, unless extended by the parties, which would accommodate that repayment term. We're recommending again that you approve the agreement, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. My colleagues have any questions? No. Then I entertain a motion to approve the recommended action.
I am moving that we approve an agreement, attachment 1, among the CEA and the cities of Carlsbad, Del Mar, and Sauna Beach, providing for the payment and reimbursement of initial costs with the understanding that we're going to change that date.
Right.
Just to clarify, that would be a change in Section 1 term, changing the date from June 30, 2025 to June 30, 2024. And there would be a change in Section 3, changing the reference to 4 years, from 4 years to 3 years, and similarly in Section 4, changing the reference from 4 years to 3 years.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. We can go ahead and vote. The motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And moving on to item 3.
Great. Good morning, Board. Again, this item is to consider authorizing an interim bank account and issuance of credit and banking services request for proposals. So the recommended action before you this morning is to authorize the establishment of an interim bank account at Union Bank and authorize the issuance of a request for proposal for credit and banking services. So quick background, at the first board meeting on November 5th, the Clean Energy Alliance Board appointed interim board treasurer and chief financial officer, which was Marie Bercuti from the city of Solana Beach, pursuant to section 5.4 of the JPA. At that same meeting, the board approved the request of advances from member agencies in the amount of $150,000 per agency to fund the startup activities. And as Jason mentioned on the last item, each of the city councils have approved that $150,000 request. So section 7.1 of the JPA requires that funds of the CEA be deposited and held in a separate account and not commingled with funds of any member agency or any other person or entity. And for operational efficiency, it is recommended that the board authorize establishment of an interim bank account with Union Bank to meet its cash needs, while a permanent financial institution is identified through the RFP process. So in addition to the need to identify a financial institution to fulfill its banking needs, it's anticipated that CEA will require credit support for financing the initial startup, energy procurement, and cash flow needs. The initial budget estimate for fiscal year 2020-2021 is approximately $4 million. The credit support may come from a combination of lines of credit, direct loans, assistance from consultants or contractors in the form of deferred fees and/or term loans. And the issuance of the RFP will inform the CEA board of options available to assist financing its initial startup and cash needs, costs of the various programs or options, and identify a short list of interested and potential banking institutions. For the schedule, if approved by the board, the anticipated timeline for the credit and banking services RFP is shown below. January 15th would be the release of the RFP. February 28th would be the bank proposals due. March 27th would be review of the proposals and a short list identified. Mid-April 2020 would be the interviews of the shortlisted banks. The end of April would be the final bank negotiations and selection, and in May 2020 would be the bank selection and credit package finalized. So in conclusion, the recommended action is to authorize the establishment of the interim bank account at Union Bank and the issue of the RFP for credit and banking solutions. I'm available for any questions.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. I just had a quick question. So we're going to be heading with Union Bank prior to us sending out an RFP with the different options that will then be brought back before council, which I assume would include interest rates and credit.
Correct.
Financial information for the banking services. Will there also be potentially the ability to revisit that contract or that banking service over time for us to evaluate whether or not some of the interest rates have altered or shifted as we head into that next segment.
Sure. Yes, I would believe there would be at all times to revisit what our contract is.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
I'll move that we authorize the establishment of an interim bank account at Union Bank and the issuance of a request for proposal for credit and banking services.
I'll second.
All right. And go ahead and vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And on to item 4. It's time and place for Clean Energy Alliance board meetings.
Thank you, Board Chair Schumacher. This item is to adopt the resolution number 19-002, setting the time and place for Clean Energy Alliance board meetings. And we're recommending that you adopt that resolution today. Sections 4.8, so just really quickly, this is an item that was on your first agenda on November 5th, but a little bit of the background here. Section 4.8 of the Joint Powers Agreement executed for the Clean Energy Alliance requires that the board hold at least 4 regular meetings per year. We're proposing 1 regular meeting per month for the remainder of the current fiscal year. The agreement requires that the date, hour, and place of those meetings be fixed annually by resolution. That's the item that's in front of you today. And the board direction that you provided on November 5th was that you wanted to see the meeting locations rotated among member agency cities to make those meetings more accessible to current and future ratepayers, and that the meetings be held on the 3rd Thursdays of each month at 2 p.m. So that is reflected in the resolution that is before you today, and the following shows the cycling of locations and the dates and times of those future meetings. So with that, we have the resolution before you today and recommend that you adopt that.
Thank you very much. Questions?
I do have a question. Sorry. I'm a little disappointed that Solana Beach is not the next meeting place, just because I do recall that I was the one that suggested we rotate, but and I thought we were friends, Jason. But once we get going with the rotation, I think I'll be okay. I'll get over it. Thank you.
I had a logistics question. I saw on the Carlsbad website that is where we're all pointing right now for information on the Clean Energy Alliance, that the meetings are videoed and available for viewing at a later date, which is fantastic. I just wanted to make sure that we were all planning to do that at our, I know we've talked about that in Del Mar and we'll be prepared to do that. Is that something we're going to be doing in Solana Beach as well?
Yes, the option is definitely there if that's the decision of the board to video these.
Okay, thanks.
When we set up our own website, the CEA website, whether it be posted there and our respective city halls?
No, not all of the meetings that we hold in Del Mar are videoed and available for future viewing.
Oh.
And I was just confirming that the CEA meetings will be available no matter where they're held for future viewing.
Perfect.
And it sounds like we're all on board with that, so thank you for that clarification.
And that may be another kind of deeper conversation for the agenda item about the website and what we're going to be able to host and how. So, yeah. Okay. Okay. I have no questions, so I would entertain a motion to approve.
I will move approval or move adoption of Resolution 19-002, setting the time and place for Clean Energy Alliance board meetings.
Second?
And we'll vote. Passes unanimously. On to item 5, which is the Clean Energy Alliance website and interim process for receipt distribution of public written comments.
Good morning, Board. Clem Brown, City of Del Mar. I'll be presenting this item. Item 5 is the Clean Energy Alliance website and interim process for the receipt and distribution of public written comment. So the recommended action is to select a preferred website address for CEA and provide direction concerning an interim process for the receipt and distribution of public written comment to the authority. Background, At our first board meeting on November 5th, CEA directed staff from its member agencies to formalize an interim process for the receipt and distribution of public written comments, with the thought that this process will probably ultimately be updated when CEA brings on an interim executive director and we have our own CEA website and when that is operational. So what staff has done in this interim process has the City of Carlsbad, as providing interim secretary clerk services, has added a statement to the portion of their website that is kind of being the hosting site for the Clean Energy Alliance in the absence of us having our own website, written comment language. And I will read that into the public record for the public that may be watching this right now or later, that to submit written comments to the CEA board, please contact the City of Carlsbad's clerk's office at clerk@carlsbad.gov or in person at 1200 Carlsbad Village Drive. Written materials related to the agenda that are received by 5 p.m. on the day before the meeting will be distributed to the board in advance of the meeting and posted on the authority's webpage. To review these materials during the meeting, please see the secretary. I would also mention that the City of Del Mar and the City of Solana Beach, I believe, also are posting the agendas for the Clean Energy Alliance on their website as well. So all 3 member agencies are posting the agenda for the public as well. Item 5 also includes a discussion on naming our website. So staff has secured the following website addresses and is seeking input from this board on what their preferred options are. And you can see the 4 options on the screen. What this will allow would be to secure the domain. We would then have a platform for a website for the Clean Energy Alliance that would then allow us to set up email addresses for the board members under that domain so that the public can comment, submit written comments to board members directly. So again, the recommended action is to select a preferred website address and provide direction on staff's interim process for the receipt and distribution of public written comment to the Clean Energy Alliance.
Thank you very much. Questions? Discussion?
I don't have any questions.
I don't have any questions.
All right, let's head to discussion. Please.
Okay.
Yeah. What are your opinions?
So I don't have expertise in choosing website names. I find most of the websites just by typing it in Google search or a search engine. So search engine optimization seems pretty important to me, almost more important than the website name. But I prefer the ones that don't have dashes or special characters in them. They're just easier to type in, like when you're doing your email address.
Yeah.
But I don't have a strong opinion on website names, so I would.
So I don't like the in the ones that don't have the hyphen. So I was more inclined to go with the hyphen just because I can read it clearly, Clean Energy Alliance, and I sort of prefer the .org, but I don't have a strong opinion, but I just don't like the, and it's a lot of words altogether that you could mess up.
Yeah. Did you have Ms. Haviland, did you have a preference for .com or .org?
I prefer .org.
We all agree on that.
Oh, yay.
We agree on .org. I understand, Ms. Becker, your point about the Clean Energy Alliance and sort of the separation. I also understand I didn't want the in there either, but then I Googled, or I typed in Clean Energy Alliance, and it went, I'm not sure which Asian country, but it went to, I think it was either Vietnam or Tibet, Thailand possibly. So it would be the only one if we're going to go with all of the lettering together, that's really what we have. I even tried CEA.com, and I'm sure they went through all the iterations of the possible. Who got that job? That's a fun job. Okay, we agree on the .org. So let's stew on that for a second and shift over to the written comments side of things. I had actually a couple questions on once we get the website established, are the board members going to be receiving specific emails for us individually?
That's correct. Once
Okay.
we identify the website address, we will be setting up email accounts for the 3 board members.
Okay. And then with the website established, I assume there's going to be a page that's going to be set up for folks to visit for the live feeds and then potentially webinars and
Yes,
public
absolutely.
education.
We'll have links to all of the recordings from board meetings, as well as all of the board documents, agendas, and staff reports and things like that available all in one place. They're currently housed on a Clean Energy Alliance page on the City of Carlsbad's website. But yes, we will have all of that contained in one easy, accessible location.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now back to the website.
I don't have a strong opinion on that. If you guys, if you wouldn't, it does seem easy to type without a hyphen. So I'm fine with the Clean Energy Alliance long.
Well, I think, yeah, and I completely agree and hear what you're saying. But I think one of the things that Ms. Haviland brought up that's super important is the idea that we have the best SEO optimization, because folks, when they hear Clean Energy Alliance, they're not going to put the in front of it. They're just going to put Clean Energy Alliance, and it's going to take them to the other website, which looks interesting, but it doesn't land them on the CCA. So I think that's going to be the most important piece for folks who Google Clean Energy Alliance, is to make sure we get that. So who feels strongest?
Well, and are we going to purchase more than one domain name and have them point to one in case someone types in the wrong extension?
Yes, sorry. At this point, we've already acquired rights to all 4 of those, so we will direct those to the preferred.
Okay. So I think the cleanenergyalliance.org is probably where I'm leaning.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right.
Last time.
So with that, I'd entertain a motion to choose the cleanenergyalliance.org, option 2.
So I move approval of the selection of the cleanenergyalliance.org for our website and approve the current process for written comments.
I'll second.
And vote. Unanimously decided yes. All right. And with that, I wanted to look over to my colleagues and see if there are any board member requests for any future agenda items at this time.
I do have something, and I'm so appreciative of our attorney coming all the way down here from.
Happy to.
Yeah, thank you. I wonder if we should discuss, though, I mean, I thought it was fabulous that you were there by phone as well. I'm wondering if we should discuss at some time, if that would be a little easier on our budget, and, since we're kind of, tight budget here. So I wondered if we could talk about that. And I mean, no offense to you, I think.
Oh, not
that's
at
great.
all.
Yeah,
And as I mentioned at the last meeting, it's really up to you to decide what works best for you. I wanted to make sure I made the commitment to you that I could be here at all your meetings. But then from a cost point of view, I think it's important to weigh that. And I was talking to some of the staff about this. And clearly one thing it seemed maybe works would be for me to come to the first couple meetings in person. And especially going through December, we have a number of items on the agenda. And then from then on, just look at that meeting by meeting. And where it doesn't seem to be a need for my presence here, for sure I can do that by phone. But if again, the board prefer me to be at particular meetings, I could come down for that meeting. So that could be maybe a good middle ground of how to approach this. But again, it's clearly up to you as to what you think works best for yourselves.
Is it easy to hear when you're on the table?
Well, the one thing
the
that,
starfish?
the only thing that was a little bit of a challenge is hearing the board members, which is important. So that's something probably we can just deal with mechanically at the council chambers to make sure that's going to be clear when I'm on the phone. So, but otherwise, in terms of my ability to step in and say something, I don't think that was a problem at all. So, so that's just one thing. In the future, if there is any problems in hearing the board members, I would want to make sure somehow we set things up on the audio side that would not be a problem.
We'll speak louder.
Okay, great. I think that middle ground is actually good. Yeah. Does that Does that need to be an agenda item where we get provide more specificity for that, or are we already at the point where it's a case-by-case basis? And
I think we're seeing general board agreement on that, and we can work with general counsel to follow that direction. It's he'll be here in person through December, and then we'll go case by case, depending on the agenda and the board's interest at that time.
okay, does that satisfy the?
I wonder if it's easier to say that he will not be here unless we contact him to be here, so that we don't have to each time meet and say, is he coming, is he not coming? Would that be okay with you guys?
That's actually a wise choice.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Becker. Ms. Haviland?
I have a lot of things that it would be great for us to have on future agenda items to discuss, but I'm being sensitive to the staff time right now for December and focusing on getting our implementation plan out. So I'm going to hold off until we have our CEO and a little bit more staff on board but we do have some big topics to address in the pretty near future, but I'm not ready to put them on the agenda yet.
Well, I look forward to hearing your hot topic items. It is. It's going to make me want to show up to all the meetings. All right. And with that, I have no comments and no agenda items at this time. I'd like to, Council, would you like to address any comments?
No, nothing to add at this point in time. So.
Okay. Thank you. Secretary? No. And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. The next meeting is going to be Thursday, December 19th at 2 p.m. here at Carlsbad City Hall. Thank you very much.
Great.